Alright, so in this video we're going to talk about other transformations you can make to an object and some of the steps that we might have to take whenever we've already created a layer mask. So we have a layer mask in our spaceman layer. I'm able to hit Command T and scale it up and down and rotate it and do all of the basic transformations that we've already done so far in this class. I can access more transformations by right-clicking while I'm in transform mode and selecting some of these different options like Skew. Skew will allow you to do skew transformations. Distort, which allows you to grab each control point independently. This can be really great for kind of repositioning the perspective. Perspective, which can both skew and, whenever you grab the corners, adjust the perspective of the figure. And finally, warp. Now the ones that we've done so far we can do while we have a layer mask and there's no problem, but whenever we do warp, it's going to give us an error. So in order to do warp and puppet warp, which are two of the more advanced transformations, we're going to need to convert this to a smart object. Now a smart object, we've actually been working with these since we started working in Photoshop, but they basically are kind of like Photoshop files within Photoshop files. So they can still be edited, they're still non-destructive, but they exist sort of nested within your Photoshop file. So let's just look at an example. If I right-click my layer, so I'm right-clicking just anywhere on my layer, not on the thumbnails, notice that, and I go to Convert to Smart Object. Whenever I do that, notice my layer mask goes away, and your first reaction might be, oh my gosh, well I just lost my layer mask. Well actually, if I double-click the preview thumbnail here, it opens up this Smart Object file, which is housed within my Photoshop document. I still have my layer mask. I can save and edit this file. Now best practice, and this is my recommendation, I'm going to just undo what I just did, is go ahead and make a copy, right? We did this in our last video. We duplicated a layer by holding down Command and pressing J, so Command J. Make a copy, and you can just turn off that first copy and even just lock it. So I'm going to lock it and hide it just to get it out of the way. Then convert this to a smart object, just in case anything happens to it. I'm going to rename this Spaceman Smart Object. Now let's go ahead and do that warp command. Now warp transformations are a little bit different. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this. They bring up these control points. These are called Bezier control points, which we're going to be using heavily in Illustrator. But each of these little circles can be grabbed and pulled to modify the actual kind of shape of our object. I can also click anywhere inside the transformation to kind of move it around. So this can be really useful if you're transforming something and like really transforming the shape of it more than just the perspective. So let's say if I want to kind of inflate the head. And I hit return and it's approved my transformations. There's also one final transformation called a puppet warp. We can find this up in the Edit Puppet Warp option. What this does is this creates a kind of simulated grid all over our model. This tool is a little bit more complex to use, so I'd highly recommend playing around with it. But basically you click to drop points on joints. So think of this as a puppet. So I'm just dropping some points here. One for the torso, two for the hips, two for the knees, and the feet. And then I'm able to come in and actually grab these joints and move them. So this is good if you need to reshape something. Now it can be very goofy, as you can probably imagine, and may not look super professional, but this is also a really, really good tool to use. There's a lot more that you can do with this. You can play around up here. We're not going to get into that in this class, But if you like this kind of style of modification, I'd highly recommend investigating this puppet warp. And again, I got to that by going to Edit, Puppet Warp. To confirm my decisions, I just hit Enter. If I want to cancel, I hit Escape. And it's added this Puppet Warp Smart Filter. We'll get into what smart filters are later. But for now, just know that your Puppet Warp is non-destructive. You can always turn it on and off. And that does it for advanced transformations.